Hello, listeners. It's Gunter Swoboda here with some exciting news. We're on the lookout for sponsors to join us on our incredible journey with Inspired Change with Gunter. If your organisation cares deeply about meaningful conversations around masculinity, self development, and mental health, we'd love to partner with you. Our podcast has a wonderful, dedicated audience committed to personal growth and positive social change. By sponsoring Inspired Change with Gunter, your brand will connect with listeners who truly value thoughtful discussion and support initiatives that promote real transformation. We're incredibly proud to be ranked number one in Australia and number 5 in the USA on FeedSpot's top men's mental health podcasts. For more information on how to become a sponsor, please reach out to Miranda Spigener-Sapon, our showrunner and executive producer. We'd love to explore how we can work together to inspire change. Now, thank you for your continued support, and let's keep inspiring change together.
You're listening to Inspire Change, a broadcast that strives to educate, motivate, and empower men to challenge traditions of masculinity. To guide us through the intricacies and intersections of emotions, relationships, and male identity is renowned psychologist, author, and speaker Gunter Swoboda. This is Inspire Change.
Before I begin the actual podcast, I would like to respectfully acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which I work. I would also like to pay my respects to their elders past and present. Welcome everybody to another episode of Inspired Change with Gunter. I'm your host. Welcome back everybody to Inspired Change with Gunter, where I take a critical lens to power, masculinity, and the structures that shape our world, amongst other things, including the whole notion of what it takes to make good men great. I'm sure I'm going to be talking for many of us globally about the shock and horror that we experienced when we witnessed a calamity of historical proportions. It was a political power play that I, in all my years, have never witnessed before. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about an ambush in the Oval Office. But this podcast isn't just about politics. It's deeper than that. It's about power dynamics, manipulation, and the display of the Dark Triad of personality traits, which are narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. And boy, were they in full display. They were on steroids being played out in the public internationally. So what happens when a wartime leader like Volodymyr Zelensky, who embodies resilience and moral clarity and heroism, walks into a room dominated by men skilled in coercion, deception, and control? So as a psychologist, let me break that down. So the first thing we need to address is that whole issue about the Dark Triad. In the realm of power, manipulation is an art. Trump and J.D. Vance both employ elements of the Dark Triad, personality constructs made up of 3 key traits. First thing is, we talk about narcissism. And this is a grandiose sense of self-importance and an insatiable need for admiration. Secondly, we're talking about Machiavellianism, which is about strategic manipulation, deception, and a ruthless focus on self-interest. The third element in this is psychopathy. And here we're talking about a lack of empathy, emotional coldness, and a dire willingness to exploit others. These traits thrive in a political environment where dominance and control are the ultimate currency. When confronted with a leader like Zelensky, who by contrast leads through vulnerability, national solidarity, and moral authority, the Dark Triad becomes overt. So let me give you an example. The setup. Imagine the scene. Zelensky enters the Oval Office expecting support from an ally. Instead, he's met with dismissiveness, psychological manipulation, and political gaslighting. Trump and Vance don't engage in direct confrontation. That would have been too easy to counter. Instead, they engage in strategic belittling, questioning Ukraine's worthiness, implying incompetence, planting doubts in the public discourse about continued aid. Now, there's a historical parallel here, and that fundamentally comes out of Machiavelli's playbook, where this is a classic power manipulation straight out of The Prince. Machiavelli wrote that a leader should appear virtuous but act with ruthlessness behind closed doors. Trump embodies this, publicly positioning himself as a tough deal maker while employing intimidation tactics privately. So let's take a look at the psychological playbook here. And this is where we talk about gaslighting and coercion. So this is a deliberate effort to make someone question their own perception of reality. So firstly, you get into a game about shifting the goalposts. Trump and Vance might keep changing their stance on Ukraine, making Zelensky feel like he's constantly justifying himself. There's the false consensus. They might claim that the American people don't support Ukraine anymore, creating a sense of Zelensky feeling isolated and thereby undermining his confidence. The third element in this fundamentally is feigning ignorance. Why are we even supporting Ukraine? What have they done for us? Now, this forces Zelensky into a defensive stance, wasting energy providing legitimacy rather than strategizing solutions, as it should be. Now, what is this? This is an intimidation dance. The goal isn't to outright deny support, but to wear down resistance until Zelensky is forced into a compromise that serves their agenda. So let me explain the sociological perspective. And what we're talking about here, and this is something I've addressed before in Making Good Men Great, we're talking about the strongman effect. This whole thing fits into the larger pattern of strongman leadership, Putin, Trump, Orban, where the illusion of strength is more important than actual governance. This is the toxic masculine model of control through intimidation rather than collaboration. What makes Zelensky an outlier is his approach. His leadership is based on collective resilience rather than personal power. Now, this unfortunately makes him both a threat and a target. So let's have a little look at history. And here I'm talking about weakening allies as a power strategy. We've seen this stuff before in history. Weakening allies is a strategic move. Stalin's divide and rule strategy, keeping Eastern European nations in political limbo to maintain Soviet dominance. Nixon's madman theory, creating unpredictability to make allies fearful of losing support. Another example historically is the 1938 Munich Agreement, Chamberlain appeased Hitler by sacrificing Czechoslovakia, thinking that this would bring peace. Well, he did exactly the opposite. Now, Trump's approach follows the same logic. Keeping Ukraine in a weakened position makes them more dependent and politically pliable. J.D. Vance, a political opportunist, plays into this by legitimising the narrative that Ukraine should prove its worth before receiving aid. Now, here we come to the crux of it. This is the quintessential patriarchal power structure in play. This entire power dynamic is rooted in patriarchal control. Trump and Vance use the 5 pillars of patriarchy. We're talking about territory. Ukraine is framed as a liability rather than a sovereign ally. It's hierarchical. Trump asserts dominance over Zelensky, reminding him of who holds the power. I hold the cards. They were Trump's words. Even the physical contact between Trump and Zelensky was that Trump was pushing. Acquisition. Aid is conditional, reinforcing the idea that Ukraine must earn US support and be grateful. The process is also competitive. The US interests are framed as in opposition to Ukraine's rather than aligned. And finally, combativeness. Zelensky is forced into a defensive stance rather than negotiating as an equal. This isn't just political strategy, it's patriarchal theatre. So what do? How do we counter the Dark Triad? So again, let's dip into history and see what lessons we can learn from there. Now, Zelensky, to his credit, doesn't engage on their terms. He embodies a different kind of power, one rooted in solidarity, emotional intelligence, and historical consciousness. So what can we learn from leaders who resisted Dark Triad manipulation? Let's pick Winston Churchill. He used rhetoric to reframe weakness as resilience. Nelson Mandela was a man who turned isolation into global moral pressure. And Václav Havel used intellectual resistance to outlast authoritarianism. Zelensky's approach is similar. He doesn't appeal to Trump's transactional worldview, but instead appeals to moral authority and international unity. So, final thoughts. This is the classic example that there is a fundamental need for a new masculinity in leadership at every level. And this is why redefining masculinity matters. Do we really want leaders who manipulate through intimidation, coercive control? Or do we want those who inspire collective action? Zelensky, in my view, represents a new leadership. A leadership model based on collaboration rather than coercion. Now the question is, will we recognise that as a strength? Certainly, hopefully, we'll recognise it as a strength before it's too late. Now, another voice from the past. For Aristotle, governance isn't just about rules and power. It's fundamentally about creating a structure in which citizens can live well and cultivate virtue. He argued that the state, or polis, exists to promote the good life, nurturing both individual and collective well-being and development. So, I want you to really reflect on this, because this is not just about the big picture. This is what happens to us in our families, It happens to us in our workplaces, in the communities. We are always going to run into people with those sort of characteristics, the unpleasant characteristics of narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. So that's it for today's episode. If this discussion sparked some thought, let's continue the conversation. Follow me on social media. Share this episode. And let's keep questioning the narratives we were fed. Until next time, this is me signing off. Stay informed, stay engaged, and always challenge the power plays around you. Until next time, this is me signing off. So, just on another note, today I'm excited to share a sneak peek into a world where fantasy ignites transformation. Get ready for Amulets of Power, a Brian Paul mystery, an upcoming book co-written by my wife Lauren, Josephson and myself. In this spellbinding tale, every amulet shivers with an ancient power, inviting its bearers to break free from the mundane and embark on an extraordinary journey of self-discovery. As you turn each page, you'll witness how mystical forces can empower you to transform your life and embrace your hidden potential. Stay tuned for the release details and join us in exploring the magic that lies within. Your adventure into power and transformation begins soon. Love to hear from you. And if you're interested, please check out my work on www.gunterswoboda.com or www.goodmengreat.com.
Thank you for listening to Inspire Change, a broadcast that strives to educate, motivate, and empower men to challenge traditions of masculinity. For more information on the Making Good Men Great movement, or for individual or group coaching sessions with Gunter, visit goodmengreat.com.